I was born in Salvador, in Bahia, and I moved to the city of Belém when I was just 4 months old. I had a good childhood, partially because the city at the time was very underdeveloped. It's where my martial arts training began, with my father and entire family. I have a lot of friends in Belém, and I'm happy to still live there and have the city in my heart. My father was a Japanese immigrant. He arrived to Brazil in 1968, and he came looking for an adventure. Well, in reality, he came to test himself and learn his limits. He wanted to see how much he could achieve in a country where he didn't speak the language or know anyone. So I have a lot of respect for my father. He always showed the philosophical side of the martial arts, always showed us the importance of having respect. He taught me and my brothers what it means to have a fighter's spirit, and that a fight is just that, a fight. I'd have to say that my father is my greatest idol. As you know, Japan has a great fighting tradition, and my father wanted to be a part of that tradition. He started with Kendo when he was 7 years old, and he has been training it ever since. In addition to this, he did judo as a child and got involved in karate when he was 15. When he arrived to Brazil, he was already a third dan in karate and a second dan in aikido. He found other instructors in Brazil, and through that exchange of information, he grew as a martial artist. But his martial arts life began and blossomed while he was still living in Japan. As an instructor, he was always very rigid and hard. He was attentive and wanted perfection. He pushed us to our absolute limits, and that rigid style was something a lot of people didn't understand. He never had any bad intentions. He was Asian, came from Japan, and that was their style. And so that is how he trained his students. He tried his best to pass on his culture and his discipline. On the contrary, my mother is a simple person from Bahia, born in Salvador. She never liked to show up to our events. She prefers to be silent and let the cameras focus on someone else. She helps everyone, but doesn't like people to know that she helped. My mother and father met each other in Salvador in 1973. He had gone there through an invite he received to teach karate. And as one would expect, he had a big social life. Through these interactions, he met my mother. They dated for 2 years, got married, and they are still together today, thanks to God. After my parents got married, they had 4 children and then adopted a 5th. So the family was quite big, and all the children in the family were boys. There's always been a very tight union in the family, which was something my father always worked for. In Japanese families, you always see a tight union, a lot of exchange between family members, one helping the other grow. My oldest brother, Take, is a third dan and a great person. He works in the administrative side of the academy and teaches there as well. Next came my brother Shinzo, who was always with me, helping me train. He also teaches at the academy and fights as well. He was the vice champion in the Japan Karate Association World Championships in Sydney, Australia. He is dedicated to the martial arts, a hard worker, and trains very hard. He is a great example for me. After Shinzo comes me. I am the third son. Kenzo is the fourth son. He trained the martial arts, but he has since left and moved towards journalism. Since he was the last son, my father wasn't so adamant about him training. Now he is 25, 5 years my junior, and he is a great reporter in Brazil, working for a national company and acquiring fame in his own field. Francisco, our adopted brother, still lives with us. He has always gone on our adventures and has always been very close to our hearts. He graduated with a degree in physical education, and we all work for the same thing, the martial arts and the academy. It is the bond that allows us to continue to grow together. I am very satisfied with it all. It was nice growing up in Belém because we could do what we wanted, whether it was studying English or running around playing games with our friends. Now Brazil is very violent. Kids cannot go out anymore, and they are forced to live on their computer. In my time, it wasn't this way. We went running, climbing, playing all sorts of games and jokes. These things are very good for developing the body and mind together, and I was fortunate to have them. However, we used to get into a lot of fights in school, Shinzo and me. They weren't serious fights, just a child's way to release energy. My father was always at school because we were caught up in these confrontations, but thank God we left that in our youth. Our father was a big part of the reason. He helped us philosophically, allowed us to see the other side of things. But kids will be kids. It was important for me to go through that time of my life. It was very fun, and I took advantage of it all. I truly adore having been raised in that time in Belém because it was a place you could play in the streets. I began training the martial arts when I was 4 years old. It was very informal in the beginning. I'd put on a kimono and hang around the academy. Nothing serious. It was good to be raised in that environment. I'd goof around, grow my strength, learn certain defensive movements, so it was great for my growth. But when I was around 12 or 13, I began training and fighting more seriously. My growth was a result of consequence at that point. My parents never forced us to train. We trained because we wanted to. Our father did, however, require that we do a sport so that our bodies were always active. He wanted us to discover exactly what we wanted. It didn't matter to him if it was soccer, martial arts, or swimming. He wanted us to choose and then be the best at it. I think that was a very important lesson. So, we trained for an hour to an hour and a half every day in the afternoons. Afterwards, we'd go out and play. So nothing was ever forced on us. We grew as martial artists because we wanted to get better and stronger. We realized early, man, if I want to get stronger, I have to train. So we trained and we grew over time. It would probably have been different if we were forced into training. You should never force a child to train hard because he most likely won't take to it. If you let them train voluntarily, it will come if it's meant to be. To help us along, my father said to us,